The first season of a brand new Formula 1 era brings with it some uncomfortable questions for many drivers and teams. We've picked out 10 particularly awkward ones that could be posed during 2026, such as, is Hamilton's Ferrari dream destined to fail? The astronomical hype surrounding Lewis Hamilton's blockbuster arrival at Ferrari was smashed into a million pieces against the reality of his and Ferrari's gut-wrenching 2025. Time only moves in one direction, and if Hamilton's recent struggles are age-related, then it's pure fantasy to believe any driver, even one with 7 titles, can reverse such a trend. But a monumental rules reset is the glimmer of hope Hamilton can cling to, as the possibility that Hamilton's 2024 and 2025 struggles were more related to rule set than age cannot be discarded. How much he needs to close the gap to Charles Leclerc is a difficult question. Leclerc was 2.5 tenths faster than Hamilton over one lap last year, and points-wise, there was a 61 to 39% split in Leclerc's favour. Regardless of what level Ferrari's car is at, a 50-50 or even 55-45 competitive split in Leclerc's favour would probably do the trick to convince everyone that there's value in Hamilton pushing on. But there's also the plausible outcome wherein Hamilton has a Sebastian Vettel 2020 style second year against Leclerc, and then it's plainly game over. And you'd imagine at that point it wouldn't even need Ferrari to step in. Hamilton would know his time at Ferrari was at a miserable end. Can Red Bull hold on to Verstappen? You probably got sick of hearing about Max Verstappen's potential Red Bull exit throughout much of last year, and if so, there's bad news for you, because you can expect a repeat of the rumours in 2026. Yes, Verstappen has a Red Bull contract until the end of 2028, but there are performance clauses which mean he can leave before then. In 2025, it was being outside the top 3 in the Drivers' Championship by the middle of the year, but in 2026, if Verstappen isn't in the top 2 by the summer break, an exit clause can be activated. And Verstappen being in the top 2 in 2026 looks ambitious to say the least. By team boss Laurent Mekkier's own admission, Red Bull building its own F1 engine for the very first time is a crazy call. The fact it's one of the 2 power unit manufacturers that has seemingly found the engine compression ratio loophole that could be worth several tenths at some circuits is at least promising. But it's still a mammoth task for your very first F1 engine to be anywhere near established manufacturers like Mercedes. There's no underpowered Renault engine either anymore, so there will be a new worst F1 engine. Plus, Red Bull has designed its 2026 car without the input of technical genius Adrian Newey, one of many key exits over the last 24 months. Many of those exits are on Verstappen's side of the garage too, such as Audi-bound chief mechanic Matt Coller, performance engineer Tom Hart, control engineer Michael Manning, and engine engineer David Mart. Plus Red Bull advisor Helmut Marko, and Red Bull's head of race strategy Will Courtney, who has been able to join McLaren early. Verstappen is at least keeping race engineer Giampiero Lambiase for 2026, but if Red Bull doesn't figure towards the sharp end of the pecking order, it's not going to take long for the rivals who did get the rules right to start trying to lure Verstappen away for 2027. Can Aston Martin's super team start delivering? Its meteoric start to 2023 aside, Aston Martin was underwhelming on track throughout the ground effect era, but off track it was busy assembling a true technical super team for 2026. Factory Honda deal, Adrian Newey from Red Bull, Enrique Cardile from Ferrari, brand new F1 campus, a state-of-the-art wind tunnel, and a 44-year-old Fernando Alonso who's been waiting nearly 20 years for title number 3. The expectations for 2026 are huge, but there are some worrying early signs that Honda might be starting on the back foot, with reports that its battery technology is behind. And that compression ratio trick Mercedes and Red Bull have found, well, Honda hasn't, and is likely to have a disadvantage there until 2027 at least. All the elements could still combine into something truly special, something good enough to even lure Verstappen, but it's going to take a big effort to get everything working well together. Will Antonelli create problems for Russell? If Mercedes starts the season at the baseline of performance most expect it to have in 2026, this is a question with championship ramifications. George Russell had Kimi Antonelli well covered through the vast majority of the 2025 campaign, but you'd expect that anyway given Russell is one of F1's sharpest operators and Antonelli was the rawest, youngest driver on the grid. There were some notable weekends where Antonelli gave Russell serious trouble, Miami, Baku and especially Interlagos, and while they were the exception not the rule, it's a hint of Antonelli's huge theoretical peak. His improvement should still be taking place at an increased rate too. Don't forget, this is only the 5th year of his single-seater career. The Russell gap feels a little too big to be closed in one season, But these things can sometimes happen much quicker than expected. Just look at Oscar Piastri. One way or another, it should have tremendous significance for the shape the 2026 season takes, and the careers of the drivers thereafter. Another year, like 2025, firmly cements Russell in F1's elite. But if Antonelli avoids a 2025 repeat, and those Russell beating weekends become more common, is he on a path to making Mercedes his team? Is Cadillac ready to be F1's slowest team? It's near impossible to predict the 2026 pecking order right now for positions 1st through 10th, but Cadillac feels a safe bet to be 11th and last. Turning up to Melbourne with a reliable car that isn't anywhere near the danger of having to clear the 107% bar in qualifying would be a perfectly fine achievement, given it started from zero and only received the final green light to join F1 in March last year. But you have to wonder, given a huge American manufacturer General Motors is involved, one very used to winning, does it have the patience to keep being slowest week in week out? That means double Q1 exits and little hopes of points outside of a freak result in a chaotic race of attrition. The race team itself feels well prepared for that, with team boss Graham Loudon's 6 seasons of F1 experience with Batmark and Manor, plus engineering consultant Pat Simmons, who filled a similar role for that team across 2011 to 2013. But are those higher up the chain ready for that? We'll find out as 2026 progresses, as Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas likely battle to stay off the back row of the grid. What if Red Bull's second driver curse doesn't end? Red Bull being anything more than a one-car team was the only missing link from its overarching resurgence in late 2025. Yuki Tsunoda averaged a meager 1.4 points per race weekend at Red Bull in 2025, so it's difficult to imagine his replacement Isaac Hadjar will do worse than that, even if Red Bull isn't at the front of the field. And Hadjar seems the best prepared driver to step up for quite some time. He was convincing and obvious choice for Red Bull, whereas the calls to promote Liam Lawson and Tsunoda to Red Bull Racing felt more like a, well, can't be any worse than the last guy kind of decision, as opposed to we believe in this driver. But what if Hadjar fails and continues the trend? That would surely point to some fundamental flaw in the way Red Bull operates the second car. The development path rightly follows the lead driver, but why, unlike the majority of the teams, does that development produce car characteristics that the second driver can't cope with? And given how impressive Hadjar was in 2025, should rookie Arvid Lindblad likewise shine in 2026, how can Red Bull believe he would be any good in the main team? Getting its first engine right and keeping Verstappen go hand in hand as top priorities for Red Bull in 2026. But if Hadjar can kick on and the 2026 rules do act as a reset for Red Bull's car characteristics, then it has a chance to finally shed an overstayed second driver problem. Want your F1 paddock pass for 2026? Be the first to know the inside track on F1's biggest shakeup in decades by joining the Race Members Club. It's the perfect time to check out a 7-day free trial of the Race Members Club and see the true picture of what's happening in F1. Come behind the scenes with us for exclusive updates, expert analysis, and bonus podcasts just for you. Just head to the Members Club via the link below to claim your free 7-day trial. What does F1 do if 2026 doesn't deliver? The popularity of F1 is in a completely different place than it was last time there was a significant chassis and engine regulation changes back in 2014. Now that it has a much bigger fan base, it needs its shiny new product to deliver in order to keep those fans entertained and continue to attract more. And we'd certainly love that too. Nobody wants to make or watch videos about boring races. But there have been concerns about the cars being energy starved because of the compromises in the engine formula to help those cars deliver peak horsepower in excess of 1,000 brake horsepower. There is a risk of races requiring drivers to do economy runs, focusing on saving energy rather than racing flat out. If so, will the FIA and F1 move to tweak things? And perhaps more importantly, will they be able to? Changes to improve the 2022 to 2025 regulations were blocked by teams previously, and there's no guarantee the same won't happen if the FIA tries to fix things in 2026. After all, if measures do require support from the manufacturers, why would those at the top of the pecking order in early 2026 agree to anything that could threaten to take away the advantage they've worked so hard for? What if Alpine's sacrifices don't pay off? Renault closing down its F1 engine division ahead of 2026 at least means we won't see a repeat of the unreliable, ill-powered Renault triples that dominated 2014's pre-season, the last time F1 changed its engine rules. Betting on Mercedes to produce a solid power unit versus Renault is a pragmatic move, but it's not suddenly going to transform F1 2025's worst team. Alpine did switch off development and focus on 2026 earlier than some rivals, and Alpine's technical leader, David Sanchez, did design the best car for the start of the ground effect era at Ferrari, even if it only lasted a few races. But if Alpine doesn't progress as expected and continues to languish near the back of the grid, no longer with an inefficient Renault engine to blame, then what happens? Will there be yet more management changes after a comically long list of exits? Will it turn to Christian Horner? Does Flavio Briatore remain? And will it be enough for Renault to finally think enough is enough? Can Audi succeed under rules it asked for? Much of F1's thinking with its 2026 rules was attracting manufacturers to join, and it achieved that with Audi's new team. But now F1 has given Audi what it wants with its increased electrification of its engine formula. Can Audi deliver something competitive? It's got some tough competition, given Mercedes and Ferrari's experience, Honda's World Championship success with Red Bull, and the aggressive recruitment drive and investment behind Red Bull's new power unit division. Audi is keeping expectations modest initially, but in a similar breath, it does want to be a title contender by 2030. On the chassis side, it did make encouraging steps in its final year as Sauber, but ultimately being near the foot of the standings is not where Audi will want to be for very long. Based on Audi's track record elsewhere, you'd argue expecting quick progress isn't delusional, but prior success in other motorsport is never a guarantee of success in F1. Just look at Toyota, 8 seasons, no wins. Audi has to expect better from a rule set that was designed to lure it. Will the other 2025 underperformers survive? Hamilton is understandably the most high profile, but he isn't the only 2025 underachiever who needs a big 2026 to save their F1 career. Keeping Lance Stroll out of the equation, considering his unusual level of job security at Aston Martin, regardless of performance, you can make the argument that Esteban Ocon is in a last chance saloon at Haas. His rookie teammate Ollie Behrman comprehensively outperformed him in the second half of the year in particular. That's sending Behrman on a trajectory to Ferrari and Ocon on a route to the exit door. Things seemed to click at the Abu Dhabi season finale, where Ocon produced one of the strongest weekends of the year, but it remains to be seen whether he can build on that breakthrough in 2026. Franco Colapinto has looked like a different driver at Alpine than at Williams, and not in a good way. There were a couple of good 2025 peaks, but far too many lows. If he wants his F1 future to be guaranteed by anything other than his sponsors topping up Alpine's bank balance, then he must get closer to Pierre Gasly this year. Liam Lawson may also be facing a race against the clock to save his F1 future once Red Bull has its next F1 protege. Fighting back into Red Bull racing seems near impossible for any driver, no matter how well they perform in the second team. Pierre Gasly is proof of that. So it's all about impressing other teams enough that when Red Bull decides it doesn't need a benchmark in its second team anymore, Lawson isn't left on the F1 scrap heap.